There's a ton of top mistake videos by indie game dev YouTubers, but I think this one is different. This one is from two actual full-time indie game devs, me and Matt Dabrowski, the creator of Streets of Rogue 1 and 2. In this conversation, we're gonna break down and maybe even disagree a little bit about which mistakes are the most detrimental for indies. And by the way, if you wanna make a profitable indie game studio from your bedroom, I do have a course that goes into all of this. It's 25% off for a limited time, and it's below. As an indie developer, I don't think that, especially young indie developers, I don't think younger, by young I mean they've been doing it for a couple years. I don't think a GDD is very valuable. You probably don't know how to make a good game, and instead you just need to make a good game. And then maybe for the next game you can write a solid GDD. But for your first couple games, I don't know if a game design document is very valuable. In fact, I think it probably does more harm than good. It's hard to say for sure. Sometimes it's really good to stick to a core, but overall, I think it's a net negative. What are your thoughts?
Let's see. Well, I mean, I've never really written out a document just to. I mean, every document I have, or right now, is just sort of like a living document. I mean, where I have, what I intend to do. I was actually able to create a roadmap fairly recently, which is the first time I've ever done that. Just for people to sort of like take a look at and try and assess where I'm at with the game and what features are coming.
Yeah.
Right. That's the stuff that's at this point locked in. But then again, this game is years in development at this point. So I think that's something different. I mean, like, I assume this means like a document that you just write up before you've started even working on the game, programming the game, or doing
you put
anything.
Together the characters and what's the core game loop and what are the mechanics, what's the USP, the unique selling point, what are all the elements of this game?
I mean, I think it's probably valuable to have as a starting point, just not something you're gonna follow to a T. Just as long as you have in your head that these things are malleable.
I've even heard developers say that it should be malleable because it's a slippery slope, and I'm just like, I can see that being valuable for if you're a 10-year veteran and you know what makes a good game and you know what makes your games good and you can predict it and put it out and then just follow a roadmap and finish it. Sure, that sounds great, but for the most part, I think indies need to, like you said, I think you put it really well, use it as a base reference point or a brainstorming document, but it needs to be flexible.
I think so. Like, I know for me, like, my document just looks like a big huge Google Doc that I just keep adding to and subtracting to, and sometimes pretty messy, but it's worked for me. So
yeah.
All the things that people are going to have to bake into a game that people expect of any professionally made game, that aren't necessarily fun to make or specific to your game, but they need to be there. Stuff like,
right.
Menus and controller remapping, interfacing with Steam. You don't realize how long this stuff is going to take and how much it's going to be until you get there and you realize there's actually like many months more work on your game to actually get these things up to snuff. And in my case, the first Streets of Rogue, like, the opening menus looked terrible because I just never found a point where I found that was like a more valuable thing to do than continue working on other features of the game. I was just like, I could do this, but then the other thing, I'm not going to be able to do that. So yeah, it just ended up not so amazing. But yeah, I think it's an easy trap to fall into, to just think you're almost done with something, but you actually have all these things that you didn't expect. And by extension, UI stuff in general, I found recently.
UI.
UI, yeah. I mean, last year is when I started really working on the UI stuff for Streets of Rogue 2, and I told my artist, like, here's all the stuff I'm going to need, and he's like, "Are you serious? Like, this is going to take me age? Like, do you know what you're getting yourself into?" I'm like, yeah, it's not so bad. There's so much like finicky little stuff you have to deal with, especially in my case where the game supports mouse and keyboard and gamepad and multiple players. Stuff looks straightforward on the screen when you see it, but reality is quite a bit different. There's a lot of work that I think people probably don't realize is necessary, especially if you're doing what I'm doing and having all these options. So
right. I compare indie game development a lot to marriage. You get married and you think you're going to spend all your time. It's kind of like in the stock photos where you've got your spouse on your shoulders and she's smiling and you're at the beach and you're getting dinner and you're laughing and you're having a great time. That's marriage, and if you don't get married. But the moment you get married, you don't realize how often you have a very lengthy, heated conversation about what you're going to get for dinner, right? Or just these small, tiny little things. They add up over time, and that's just part of marriage, right? Part of being married is all these little tiny conversations that you never thought you'd have to have. And the same is true with indie game development. All these tiny little things that you didn't think were going to be there. You thought, I have to make a first-person shooter, so I'll be working on guns, enemies, and that's about it. And that's not true. It's everything else.
The tiny little things are why my game is so late. I always call it death by 1,000 tiny cuts. I mean, it's like it's like you look at the footage from like 2 years ago and you're like, this looks great. Why is this taking you so long? Because you're not seeing all the stuff that actually needs to be a good game. Yeah. As opposed to when it just looks nice in screenshots and videos.
Thomas Maller, the creator of Ori and the Blind Forest, he was like, I don't agree. I don't agree that you need to have a hook. He just thinks you just need to make a great game, and it's fine.
Oh, it could be. I mean, what's the hook of Ori, really, aside from just looking really nice?
Well, that's what I told him. And Thomas, if you're watching, I love you. And I told you, I talked to him about this, and I said, your game's hook is the look. That is the hook of the game. And he was like, no, it's how it feels, and it's the gameplay. And I was like, no, but that's not what I don't think that's what a hook is. I think a hook is the doorway to the game. It's like, it's kind of how you market it almost. The gameplay itself, even if it feels good, that's not a hook, because you can't really put that. I don't know if you can put that in a trailer.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of Ori, like, I mean, if he thinks it's the feel of it, I think he's incorrect about that, actually, as to what gets people interested. Because I mean, like, when I think of Ori, and I haven't actually played either of the games, unfortunately. I mean, it's always been on my queue. I always wanted to, but yeah. I mean, I think of just something that has always looked like, a league above most other games, sure. and that right there is a major hook. I mean, like, actually recently there was a Chucklefish put out the trailer for the game Witchbrook. The trailer doesn't really show a lot of gameplay. The game has been like highly wished for a long time, but just look at the game is amazing. Like, there's not many people doing like a game that's 3/4 view like this and looks this good.
By the way, I'm not saying that Ori can't have a hook with gameplay. I'm saying that a hook is something that's immediately evident in like the first 5 seconds of a trailer. That's why I think that it's important to have a hook, because it's not that every game since 1970 or whenever, 77, when was the first game made? It's not that they've always needed a hook. It's that we live in a new generation now where there's thousands of games you're competing with. And if you want to do well, you can gamble and just say, I'm going to make a really good game, and it doesn't have a hook. You can do that. Or you could say, well, let's just pretend I have a mediocre / good game, which that's most indies. If I have a strong hook with a good game, just a decent game, it'll be easier to sell. So that's my point. That's why I think you need a hook.
Or something might just look a little bit off, and they can have like a big impact on a potential player's perception of a game. Like, for example, like if you go to weloveverygame.com, I think it's a website that just shows you every new game coming out on Steam and shows you some screenshots in a easy to parse format. It's a great way to get an impression of like everything that's coming out on Steam.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I'm looking at it now.
Great resource to have. I love this website. I go there every day.
Are most of these junk?
Yes. That's the thing. I mean, it gives you a good impression of exactly what's going through the pipeline and stuff that you wouldn't see on the new and trending or whatever. Like most of this stuff will sell like nothing or whatever. But like sometimes you'll see like screenshots for something that looks at a distance like fairly kind of cool. Like and you're like, oh, this kind of looks like interesting, and then you click it, and you'll see like some of the text, some of the like a font is a little bit off, and you're like, oh, okay, all right, so this is like a slap together kind of thing.
Asset flip,
asset flip, or just something where like the person maybe just didn't have a whole lot of experience, doesn't realize these things are important. Yeah, everything's got to be cohesive.
Why is that?
I don't know, because people just their brains detect something's wrong, I guess. Yeah.
And something usually is. Like if there's a lack of cohesion with the aesthetic, it typically funnels down into the gameplay. But what's funny is people might go, well, but Undertale, and I'm like, well, Undertale is cohesive though. It might look strange and it might look kind of off and weird, but it's cohesive in its weirdness.
Right, yeah.
Right? What I mean by that is the first paragraph of your game, I think of it in terms of like if it was a book. The first paragraph or the first 5 minutes of your game are insanely important, and the last 5 minutes are insanely important. And I'm interested to tell you this one because I don't know if that's true with your games. because they're roguelites.
Last 5 minutes of a movie are very important. Like if you go out on like an end credit sequence with like even your music choice, and you get people in a good mood when they're coming out of the theater, they're gonna be like, that was a good movie. I liked that.
And that's the thing, is it depends on the genre of the game. So for me, I've got a 4-hour linear immersive sim, very similar to BioShock. The whole point of a game like BioShock, or in my case, a game like Twisted Tower, is set up, payoff, set up, payoff, set off, payoff as you move through the story. And if that final moment doesn't pay off, they're going to feel cheated for all of the other setups and payoffs. So that for me, it's especially true if you think of it relative to the middle. If the middle is grinding, it's not particularly unique. If you have the bookends really special, you can get away with it. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's going to be an overwhelmingly positive game, but I think you can get away with it if you have a really strong setup and a really strong payoff. Is that true, though, with Streets of Rogue? Does the first 5 minutes even matter for that game?
The first 5 minutes of Streets of Rogue was a tutorial, which I was hesitant on doing. I think the tutorial works pretty well. People generally like it. In fact, I actually got a Kotaku article written about it back in the day. Yeah, because it was sort of just like making fun of tutorials. The guy gets like overly excited when you can just do these extremely simple things. And you have this instructor who's just like getting so excited he actually explodes, and then it's just ridiculous. But it works pretty well as a tutorial. But I don't think it drives people away or anything. But in my case, it's not necessarily the first 5 minutes as much as it is like the first the progression that you get from the early progression. I sort of based this around like playing Crypt of the Necrodancer. When I first played that, I was like, oh, that's the sort of progression I need to have like early in the game where you do feel achievement for you're obviously losing your runs because it's a roguelike, but you're still making progress and you're feeling achievements and you're feeling like you're doing, getting better and doing better and unlocking characters and stuff. And I was able to get that down. So that was important there. Yeah, the first 5 minutes, I mean, it was there to set the tone basically in this game. Oftentimes I'll be, a game will launch and I'll read the reviews and, people will be reporting on something that the developer probably should have been aware of or maybe was aware of. I don't know. A lot of the times I think it just stems from not having enough eyes on something before launch. It's like with launches, you want to just destroy as many unknowns as you possibly can, right? Yeah. So I think it's probably just valuable to have a lot of eyes on a game before I think it goes out. Right.
I've been thinking about my own game in that regard, where I'm like, okay, I did all my testing for the demo. I had a ton of testing for the demo of Twisted Tower, and it was so painful. So many negative comments and people being brutally honest. And now I'm like, okay, I got that out of the way. Now I don't need to do that again. But I know deep down, I'm like, nope, I need to do alpha testing for the whole game all the way through to the end. You can either suffer the pain of bad feedback or like negative feedback. You could do it before you launch or after your launch, but you can't avoid it. You're going to get it somewhere. If you don't get feedback before you launch, you're probably going to have a bad launch, right? You got to take your medicine before launch in private or in public. Which one do you want to choose? All right. I hope that was helpful. And be sure to support Matt's game, Streets of Rogue 2, by wishlisting below. And also, if you want to make a profitable indie game studio from your bedroom, you can check out Full-Time Game Dev below. It's 25% off with a 5-day limited time coupon code. Join 4,500 students. Master Unity or Godot or Unreal, whichever engine you want to learn. And also learn how to get published or funded with just a demo. Get featured by major press outlets, or maybe even hit the Steam front page. I've done all of this and I teach about how to do it. So hopefully that helps you. Click the link below to get 25% off. Cheers.